Welcome to Lesson 31, Part 1. Now in Lesson 30 we talked about the swing plane changing with the clubs. The swing was upright with the wedge, flatter with the 6-iron and flatter still with the driver. We understood there was 12 to 13 degrees difference between a driver plane and a wedge plane. And that optimum plane was unique to your physique and the club that you're using. Now, I designed the Explainer about 15 years ago, and it teaches you to swing in your optimum biomechanical plane. We can all swing too flat or too upright. For everybody there is an optimum, but that optimum is unique to your physique and the club that you're using. Now in Part 1 of Lesson 31 I want to talk to you about a phrase called shaft plane. So the Explainer is in the optimum biomechanical swing plane. So if I demonstrate that to you, I take my 6-iron at address and then I'm going to swing the 6-iron head parallel to the Explainer, which is set in the biomechanical plane. So there we are, that's a 6-iron swing plane. Now, as you can see, at the start of the swing, the butt of the club is well below the biomechanical plane. So what happens is, as we make a golf swing, the club head tracks close to parallel with the biomechanical plane, described by Explainer, but the butt of the club rises into the plane. So here at the top of the swing, the butt of the club is in the plane. At address, it was well below the plane. Now that must give you a massive clue. If the butt of the club is below the plane at address, but is in the biomechanical swing plane at the top, there has to be a diagonal journey of the butt of the club from below plane to the plane. And when we come down to hit the shot, that angle is restored if you're playing a fade mechanism, or it might rise. But the important thing to appreciate is the butt of the club is rising to the plane. So, the word shaft plane comes from the plane described by the shaft. The wedge shaft is in an upright plane, the 6-iron a flatter, and the driver flatter still. I'm just going to take this piece of buffalo board and just rest it in against the ball. Now you should be able to see on camera that the shaft plane that the board is reflecting is much flatter than the plane of Explanar. There's really quite a large difference. So we'll put a graphic line in and you can see where the shaft plane is. So here's shaft plane's address, and that line extends out to infinity. That is the shaft plane. Now, if I keep the shaft and the butt of the club on this plane, it demands that I go below the plane. So now I'm on the shaft plane, but I'm very narrow in my chest here. The club head is behind me and not in front of the hands. The Explainer demonstrates that a quarter way back the club head should be here. The plane board would say no, it'd say it would be lower. Now this is where Tiger got into trouble 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. After leaving Butch Harmon, he'd always been shut in the takeaway. He then embarked on a very dangerous course of action for a number of years where he went back on the shaft plane and we had the shaft too low and he was narrow here. Now, when you're below plane, you've then got to do a massive repair job to get back to plane. And that repair job involves the arms lifting and the forearms rolling and getting bowed at the top. So Tiger found himself on the shaft plane in the takeaway, but below the biomechanical plane. He then had to do a massive repair job, roll the forearm lift, he got bowed, he got the shaft across the plane at the top, the wrist was bowed, he was in all sorts of a pickle, and because he was Tiger, he could make the return journey because of his talent. But it's a very, very difficult journey. The thing I like now about Sean Foley is Sean Foley has got Tiger working on the biomechanical swing plane, and he's got him away from the shaft plane. Okay? I only teach shaft plane to pupils if they're going to hit the ball with the shaft. The plane that matters to me is the biomechanical swing plane appropriate to your body and to the journey of the club head. It's the club head's journey that hits the ball, and to me that's paramount. So they've got the comparison. This is the shaft plane, which is much flatter than the biomechanical swing plane. Which one do you want to swing on? Do you want to swing on this one, or do you swing on that one? I think you can see the golfers throughout the centuries who've played really well have swung on the biomechanical plane and they haven't swung on the shaft plane. If you start on the shaft plane, it's going to be a very dangerous journey to the biomechanical plane and back again. So keep it simple, forget shaft plane, and just worry about your biomechanical plane. That's the angle of the swing plane from the top of the backswing to the ball through the upper sternum.